If you're loading for Magnum cartridges, Hodgdon Retumbo is worth a look, and that's what we're going to do in this story. Gavin here from UltimateReloader.com. I'm back with Guy Miner. Thank you for joining us, Guy.
You bet.
This time we're taking our powder up a level to Magnum level.
Yes, indeed.
Retumbo, it's one of a handful of popular go-to Magnum level rifle powders.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it's for, is overbore Magnums. We've got a lot of gunpowder pushing a little bullet down that barrel, or a big bullet.
Yes, I like the Magnums. There's just a time when you need Magnum, whether it be for just the shooting experience, the long-range power, the knockdown power with a big game animal. It's good stuff.
Oh, yeah. I've shot my share of Magnums. Yeah.
And Retumbo specifically is a part of Hodgdon's extreme lineup of powders. Now, we've tested a couple other extreme powders recently. We just covered H4350, and we've also covered Varget. Now, extreme powders are formulated for temperature stability. So that has to do with if you're in real cold temperatures, all the way up to Saharan African temperatures, 120 degrees, whatever that happens to be, you're going to get a much more consistent velocity. You're not going to see those slower velocities in those colder temperatures and the elevated velocities in those higher temperatures.
Maybe even overpressure.
Exactly.
When it's 120 degrees out there and you're headed across the desert.
Exactly. Not what you want.
No.
So Retumbo is going to be in that Magnum burn range. It's available in 1 pound and 8 pound containers. It's a part of the extreme lineup of powders. Let's talk about burn rate. So what I've got here is the burn rate chart, and we've enlarged the section kind of down towards the end here where we have our Magnum powders.
Yeah, this is a slow burning powder, and it's right in there with the rest of them. You take a look at that, and I just feel really good about the way Retumbo has treated me over the years. And he needed that slow burning powder to get the most out of some of those big Magnum cartridges.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's right next to a couple others that I use on a frequent basis. Ramshot Magnum, H1000. These are mainstay Magnum powders that are really popular.
And we played with the IMR 8133 just last summer. We were using that in the 7 mag and got some impressive results.
Yep.
And it's right next to Retumbo on that burn rate chart.
Yeah, that 7 mag, that was cooking.
It was. That was moving right along.
Yeah, when you get over 3,000 feet per second with a Magnum, you're up in the extreme territory.
Yeah, and we were well over that. We were at 3,300 for those 150s.
That's
something like that.
Yeah. That is totally ridiculous. And what's interesting is these powders are right next to each other on the burn rate chart. But sometimes you'll get drastically different results from one powder to the next. You do your OCW load workups or whatever kind of load development you're doing. Sometimes a bullet, rifle, whatever it happens to be the combination, just prefers one powder over another.
It does. And I'm sure there's a scientific explanation for that. I don't know what it is. I do know that some rifles, some cartridges respond better to one kind of powder or one kind of bullet or another. And it's just interesting. Kind of boggles my mind sometimes. Well, wait a minute, my last 300 Magnum like this, why don't you?
Yeah.
Something like that.
So why don't we next take a look at some different cartridges and the kind of performance you can expect with Retumbo in those cartridges. So there's a lot of different cartridges that you can use Retumbo in. What we've got here from left to right is the 25-06. We've got the 6.5 PRC, the 300 PRC, and then if you want to get really crazy, the 300 Remington Ultra Mag.
That's a big bad boy. Well, the PRC isn't much behind it.
True.
They're both big, strong, hard cartridges.
In a lightweight rifle, translation, abusive.
Yes. Confession, I had my 300 Remington Ultra Mag for less than a year, and it moved on to somebody else. It shot great, it had a ton of power, and it was beating me up awful bad.
Sounds like a very familiar story because I had a 300 Rem, and probably not 6 months after I got it, I re-barreled it as a 300 PRC.
Yeah.
A great cartridge. You're going to want to think about how to make that recoil manageable with the brake. I threaded the muzzle on mine and I put a brake on. That helped a lot. That's not bad at all. My break is awesome.
Yeah, I could have braked my rifle instead.
But then you have a blast
Sold
wave
it.
in the face instead of
This is true.
yeah, instead of abuse in the shoulder. So tell us what you've got here that you've done with loads, and then what you've pulled from OEM data here. This is an interesting comparison.
Sure. So I started using Retumbo with a 300 Ultra Mag and a Nosler 200 grain bullet, and I was appalled at 95 grains of some kind of gunpowder going off with each shot. It's like a pound of powder doesn't last long that way, but that was getting me 3,100 and some odd feet per second, as I recall. Sold that kicking beast, moved on, and was looking around, what can I do with this Retumbo that's sitting here in my loading room? And I opened up the manual. Both Hodgdon and Nosler both said, hey, your 25-06 is going to work great with this stuff. And so it was 2008 was when I first started putting it in the 25-06, and I haven't switched yet.
Nice.
So lots of velocity, lots of consistency, good accuracy. Yeah, everything I've shot with my 25-06 since 2008 has been with Retumbo.
3,200 plus feet per second. That's impressive.
Yes, and really, we just tested that load not too long ago, and we got an SD of 9.
Single digit in a basic hunting rifle as
yes,
well.
factory built Remington.
Love it.
Yeah, and doing that, and my hand loading at home, and 3,200 feet per second, and nice tight groups, and that SD, single digit SD, that was pretty sweet. So you're getting it all there with the Retumbo. You've got your temperature stability, like we talked about, which is great for hunting and target shooting. And then you've got the velocity to flatten that trajectory out.
Yep.
And then you got the accuracy. And,
Yeah.
and it was all there.
That's wonderful, both for hunting or other long-range shooting capabilities. If guys are 300 Win Mag is going to be another popular cartridge here, and that's a great long-range competition round or other mile-plus, steel ringing type situation. I noticed here that you pulled data for both 6.5 PRC and 300 PRC. Now I've used Ramshot Magnum and I've used H1000, and both of those performs really well. I'm wondering what kind of performance and what kind of accuracy I would see using Retumbo here. Maybe I'm going to even use this data as a starting point.
That'd be good. Oh, by the way, those loads are all maximum loads from the book. So if you work up to them, work up carefully.
Yeah, and always cross-reference with multiple manufacturers' sources of load data, just to make sure that you've gone through your due diligence.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I put both the PRCs in there because although I personally don't know a lot about them, I've never shot one.
Oh, well, we'll have to change that here shortly.
Yeah, we will. I know they're growing in popularity. They're very, very much so with both competition shooters, and some of the hunters are starting to use them too. And why not? They're flat shooting, hard hitting, accurate. Why not?
So I recently covered Bergar's new MG Light, which is a great hunting rifle. It's available up to 300 Win Mag. And a lot of you all said, hey, what about 300 PRC? So just more evidence that, these PRC cartridges are, I think they're here to stay and definitely real popular.
I think so. Cartridges come and go sometimes, but these guys seem to be getting more popular and sticking around. I like that.
So here's an interesting data point. You were able to send a 110 at 3,200 plus feet per second in the 25-06. Now in the 300 Remington Ultra Mag, you've got a 200 grain projectile. It's almost twice the weight at over 3,000 feet per second. That is ridiculous.
It is. It's all that. That's one of the things that attracted me to the Ultra Mag in the first place. Was gosh, I'm hunting with. At that time, I was using a 100 grain bullet in the 25-06, and I should get something bigger. So I got that Ultra Mag to shove a 200 grain bullet basically as fast as my 25-06, almost as fast as it was shoving a 100 grain bullet. A huge difference in power.
Yeah.
And by the way, the rifles were otherwise identical. They were both 700 CDLs, so they weighed about 7.5 pounds.
Oh my, that's...
Yeah, it was not a...
But if you were going to take down a moose, I think that 300 Remington Ultra Mag would be pretty awesome for that.
It's a great cartridge. It really is, and it is a sheer powerhouse.
Okay, what we want to know from you all is, what are you using Retumbo for? What cartridge, what bullet, what rifle? And next, we're going to look under the microscope. So let's look at Retumbo under the microscope. What do we have here, Guy?
We've got your Ramshot Magnum. We've got everybody's favorite, Varget. And then we've got Retumbo, which is pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, we wanted to give you guys a little bit of a variety of different types of powder. Here under the microscope, this is a 400 power Wi-Fi microscope. We can see here on the tablet those different powders. We've got the Ramshot Magnum on the left, that's the spherical. We've got Varget in the middle, which we've put into the microscope multiple times. I wanted to include that because that's kind of our control data set, if you will. And then look at the size of those Retumbo granules.
Those are some big bad granules for a big bad powder.
Yes.
I like that stuff, yeah.
The Varget has that familiar green cast to it, and the Retumbo looks more kind of charcoal gray, at least
does.
Here under the scale.
You know, and I don't want to overstate the size of those kernels because they're actually really small, really tiny, and they do flow through a powder measure real well. They're just big compared to the other two we've got there. Yeah.
Absolutely. And for reference, we've got a steel scale here. Those tick marks that you see there on the screen are 1/64th of an inch. So next, we're going to take some measurements, and we're going to quantify the length and the diameter of each of these granules. And here's the numbers. We took what we just showed you under the microscope. I took a look in post-production and looked at these 1/64th of an inch tick marks and approximated what the length and the diameter is here for each. Now, this Magnum powder is interesting because it is actually totally spherical. We saw that when we put it on the platen here.
They didn't want to stay in one place.
No, they did not want to stay in one place. So the length and the diameter are the same there at 28 thousandths of an inch. Varget, as you can see in this picture, and Retumbo, very close in length. The Retumbo granules are perhaps just a little bit longer. Where the big difference is the diameter.
Yes, yeah, that's very obvious in the picture. They are about the same length. I thought they were longer, but they're, you know, it's a little longer, not much. It's a lot bigger around each one of those.
Yes, so Varget had a length of 59 thousandths of an inch, Retumbo 63, just a little bit longer, diameter on Varget 31, and then up to 39 on Retumbo. And my hypothesis here was, okay, if these are larger in diameter and larger overall, they're going to probably pack a little bit less densely in whatever container they're in, so the density ought to be a little bit lower. And we took a look. We took some data from our old tests, and we put kind of everything up here. Turns out Retumbo's right in the middle, and it's a little bit more dense than Varget.
Surprised me.
Yeah, every time I've done one of these tests, I've had these little surprises, actually. So Retumbo comes in at 1024 grams per liter, and I guess that kind of makes sense. It's right there. There's not a whole lot of variation in this list until you get to that flattened ball powder, 6.5 stay ball, which is up all the way up to 1130. So that's quite a difference.
It is, and that's you know, you're switching very much in your powder types there, the whole shape of the granules, and so it can pack in there tight.
Yeah, I think maybe what we should do next is we should plan a tested story on Magnum, the spherical powder, because it would be interesting. We didn't have time to do it for this story, but to compare the density between the spherical powder, the flattened ball powder, and these stick powders, just to see how that's all going to stack up. Okay, so at the end of the day, Retumbo is a great powder because it's part of the extreme lineup. It's temperature stable.
Right.
It's right there in that sweet spot burn range, the burn rate for, you know, the 300 PRC, the 300 Win Mag, and you found with the 25-06,
which surprised me a little bit, but honestly, I've stuck with that for years now. It's brought me an awful lot of mule deer, a couple of antelope, and it's rough on coyotes.
I bet. That sounds kind of crazy. And a lot of people, I've read about a lot of really, really good results with accuracy with this powder as well, which makes me want to try it with more cartridges. Like I mentioned, the 6.5 PRC and the 300 PRC would be great
I
options.
think it'd be wonderful to try it in that real accurate 6.5 PRC. I got a feeling it's going to look really good. It seems to be calling out for that kind of powder.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you, Guy, for all of your hard work on this story.
It's terrible to have to play with guns and hand loading, and then make a story out of it.
And we actually have some of this. I know. We feel your pain. This stuff is like gold to get your hands on. And again, we'd like to know, what are you doing with Retumbo? What cartridge are you loading? What rifle are you shooting it out of? What kind of results are you getting? That concludes this video, and that means it's time to wrap it up. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up. Also, make your voice heard. If you have something to say, please drop a comment. Make sure you're subscribed with notifications, because you're not going to want to miss the awesome content that is coming up. And finally, flex your reloading pride. You could look great in one of these t-shirts. We've got multiple designs at the Ultimate Reloader store. I'll see you later, because I'm off to go shooting.